Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Alhamdulillah, we praise Allah, we thank Him, and we glorify Him. Can you all hear me? Wa alaikum assalam to Abdul Rashid. Thank you for responding. All right, so let's get started, inshallah. Today's session is an open Q&A session wherein you ask your questions and I will respond if I have an answer, and if not, then we will have email correspondence wherein you send me an email with your question and I will look into your question and respond to you via email. Wanted to start off by apologizing for last week. Some of you may have attempted to attend the class, but I was having technical difficulties on my end and I could not get into the Zoom call. So I beg your pardon and apologize for the inconvenience that was caused. We will make it up to you, and we're going to have that same class, which is the prayer of help. It's going to be held next week as a substitute. So we're going to make it up to you this month, inshallah, if Allah allows us to. I am under the weather and my voice is not fully, it's animated and passionate as typically is the case. So that's another thing that I wanted to share. But I still wanted to meet with you and see if I can help out with any of the questions that you may have. I'd like us to start off by having introductions. So if you all can introduce yourselves, I see some names that are not familiar to me, and at least one of you just says a Zoom user. So if you can please sign in with your actual names and then introduce yourselves in the chat box. And then we can get started with our questions and answers. Brother Abdul Rashid from Rhode Island. Allah bless you. Thank you for being with us as usual. Thank you for your dedication. Although you are at work, but you still tune in and participate with us. Shaliwa from the UK. I think this is the first time I'm reading this name, so welcome and thank you for being with us. I don't know what the origin of that name is. It doesn't sound like a British name. I'm not sure. Nigerian originally. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. So Nigerian from the UK. Alhamdulillah. Okay. Muslim name is Basirat. Okay, got it. What, if you don't mind me asking, what tribe from Nigeria are you from? When I went to university, my roommate was from Yoruba. Yeah, I guess the same tribe that you're from. I think that tribe also is the tribe of the famous Muslim basketball player Hakeem Olajuwon. I think he is also Yoruba. But I was under the impression that the Yoruba tribe is mostly Muslim, but here we have you, and you are in the New Muslim Academy. Does this mean you converted to Islam, or does this mean, what does that mean? If you can let us know a little bit, because you didn't share how long you've been Muslim. I typically like that in the introduction as well. We're just doing intros for those of you who are tuning in a bit late. So if you can all introduce yourselves, share a little bit about yourself, how long you've been Muslim, especially the new ones that I haven't seen before. But for all of you, is good to share because you get to know one another as well. Alaikum salam, Amanda from Colorado. I see. Okay, born a Muslim. All right, got it. May Allah allow us all to stay steadfast on His path and guide us and protect us from harm. Okay. Daya from Panama. All right. Panama in Central America, Latin America. Okay, so our topic for today is an open Q&A. So you get to ask the questions and I will attempt to answer your questions. So let's get started. Whoever has a question, feel free to ask your question. Now, you can either send your question in the Q&A box, and I see there's already a question here. And then I have the other option is in the chat box. And then the third option would be if you want to speak your question and do it audibly, then I will enable your microphone. So whatever you prefer, you just let me know. So I'll start with this first question that I have. I have a few questions about prayer. And again, what I think the questioner is referring to is the question is regarding salah specifically. So I always like to make to distinguish between prayer, which is simply dua, speaking and calling unto God, and between salah, which is our formal worship, what I say is the prescribed ritual devotion. So I believe the questions here have to do with salah. And again, straight off the bat, I know that this is an opportunity to ask the questions, but I do want to highlight to you all that we do have a specific dedicated class 3 times a month with my colleague, Dr. Sajid Umar, which is all about salah. Practice makes perfect. And the reason why I prefer the questions are asked to him is because he is the teacher that's teaching about salah, just so you don't have mixed messaging. Okay? So that's the idea there. But I'm still going to respond to your questions because you took the time to ask them and you tuned in here. And I know that sometimes the time may not be suitable for you to attend the other class. So I'm not in any way here refusing to answer. When we are alone, do we say salah silently? Do we say salah silently? So we again have to define what that is. So salah is performed a certain way. There are certain things that we have to say and to recite. Okay? So we have to recite certain things. Now, reciting is described as you at least can hear yourself. Okay? You can hear yourself. Now, not every single thing that is said in salah is actually recited. So we're gonna make some things distinguished here. So when we start salah, so I'm just gonna go through a typical salah. When we start salah, we do Allahu Akbar. Okay? So that does not need to be loud. The only time Allahu Akbar is out loud, as in audible, so loud where others can hear it, is when the person that is performing salah is an imam, which means a salah leader, praying and leading a congregation. That congregation could be the person's own family, or it could be in a mosque or any other place where Muslims are gathered. So that's the only time when we say Allahu Akbar out loud. It does not need to be loud. But now we move on to the next portion. The next portion is recitation of the Quran. Okay? So that is the only part of Salah that is said out loud. That's the only part of Salah that is said out loud in the following 3 Salah. And what's common between all 3 is that the sun is not around. Fajr, which is the post-dawn Salah, before the sun rises. Maghrib, which is the post-sunset Salah. And Isha, which is the nighttime Salah. These 3, when you're standing in the first and the second unit, you recite out loud. Again, that does not mean you're so loud and projecting your voice, but it means that if somebody is there, they can hear that you're saying something. You don't need to be too loud, however. Okay? So that is the way that the messenger of God, the messenger Muhammad, performed these rituals, and we follow in his example. So again, the morning, post-dawn, Fajr. Maghrib, post-sunset. And Isha, nighttime. Those 3 in the first 2 rak'at. But now that may be confusing. Well, Fajr only has 2, correct? So in both units, in the morning prayer, so after you say Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, you start reciting. Whatever you're going to recite, so you're going to recite the first chapter of the Quran, then maybe something short after that, and that's it. That's the only thing that you recite out loud. Okay? So it has nothing to do whether people are with you or people are not with you. Okay? Now with the women actually have a dispensation. Women have a concession that they don't have to recite out loud at all. They don't have to. All 5 times, they don't have to recite out loud. That is something that is for men. Men can recite out loud in these 3 times out of the 5. Okay? So that's regarding the obligatory Salah. Now there was a follow-up question, and it says, so it's not fake Fajr, I think there was just a typo. The Sunnah Salah is always silent. Sunnah Salah is always silent. Again, what we mean by silent is not that you don't move your lips. Your lips always have to move. You must always recite in a way where you can hear yourself. So you recite under your breath, basically. No one else can hear you. Let's say somebody's around, they can't hear you, but you can hear yourself. That's the distinction between projecting your voice audibly or reciting in a quiet fashion. So I don't like saying silently, because silent, is complete, the absence of noise. That's what silence is. When we say silence, it means nobody's talking, but we are talking here. But how are we talking? We're talking with a very low voice. So it's either low voice or high voice. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so that answers that initial question. Please let me know if I answered your question so we can move on to the next question. Okay. And sure enough, our sister said can't make the other class at the time provided. So I'm glad you're able to make this one, and I hope that my answers are okay. Makes perfect sense. Okay, great. Alhamdulillah. Very good question, actually. So again, just to review, women need not to recite out loud at all. But if they wish to, the recitation out loud would be Fajr, Maghrib, and Isha, the first 2 rak'ahs only. Okay? All right. So that's the first question. Wa alaikum salam to Dr. Everett, and no problem for being late. Sierra from St. Louis, been Muslim for almost a year, alhamdulillah. All right. Abdul Rashid says, when it comes to halal food, so we got to break this down. Halal means food which is lawful to consume according to the Islamic dietary restrictions and guidelines. Is it okay for Muslims to eat fast foods? And what about the foods we get from the regular grocery stores? Well, fast food is a very big name that includes so many different places. There is a variety of places. When we talk about halal food, the regulations are as follow. All vegetables and fruits are lawful to consume. All fish is lawful to consume. The restriction happens to be on certain land animals and certain birds. When it comes to land animals and birds, there are certain varieties that we are allowed to consume. So that also extends to all animal products. So we cannot consume pork products. Anything that has to do with the pig must not be consumed for a Muslim. That is strictly forbidden. And if you're familiar with the Bible, that's also forbidden in the Bible. Of course, Christians don't follow that particular commandment because they don't follow the commandments of God. They think that with the coming of Jesus, all the old commandments are no longer applicable. But nonetheless, that is something that God Almighty has forbidden. The pig is an animal that He has forbidden for us to consume. Now we move on to the other common animals that are on display, whether in food establishments like restaurants or whether in the stores. So you're typically going to have cow meat, which is known as beef in the US. You're going to have chicken, and you're going to have possibly lamb wherever you happen to be. So those are the 3 main varieties of animal that are on sale. So for us as Muslims, not only should the animal itself be lawful to consume, so we already said these animals are lawful to consume, however, that's one condition. So pork is not lawful to consume, so it's completely ineligible. We're not even going to discuss pork. Pork also will extend to lard. Lard is the fat of the pig. And again, many establishments, they actually use lard because it's the cheapest type of oil. And it probably gives food specific flavoring. So we're talking about, again, to keep it basic, cow meat, which is beef, and chicken. Let's focus on these 2 things. And then maybe sheep, which is lamb. So now we say, well, this animal is one of the animals that God has allowed for us to consume with the condition that it is killed a certain way. It must be killed and processed a certain way. And that specific way is the following. So again, I want you to keep those conditions in mind. The first condition is the individual administering the slaughter of the animal. The individual must be a believing Muslim who practices the regulations of slaughter in Islam. Or it must be a Jew or a Christian who follows the regulations of slaughter in those two traditions. To make it simple, Christians don't really have any regulations of slaughter. As we said earlier, they got rid of all the commandments. But Jews, if they're a practicing Jew, they have the regulations called kosher meat regulations. You're from Long Island. You guys have plenty of Jews in the state of New York, specifically in the Big Apple itself. So kosher is very available in an area like yours. Now, I can't say that on every other place. So the area where I live in right now, east of Los Angeles, doesn't have kosher establishments. But where I used to live in Los Angeles, in the valley, we had kosher establishments all around. So it really depends on where you're at. So the first condition is the person administering must either be Muslim who practices the religion and practices the slaughter method, or a Jew who believes in the religion and practices the slaughter regulations. So far we got two conditions. First condition is the animal must be allowed. Second condition, the person administering the slaughter. Third condition, the tool that is being used, it must be a sharp knife or object that will cut the throat swiftly and humanely and not make the animal suffer in the process. 4, before the slaughter takes place, so the slaughter is simply to cut. So you can imagine this is the neck of the animal. Before you cut the neck of the animal, you must say Bismillah if you're a Muslim. You must mention God's name on the animal before you take its life. You have no right to take the life of a living being, even if it's allowed for you to consume, except after mentioning God's name. That is what allows you to consume it. If God's name is not mentioned at this time, then that animal's killing was unjustified and the animal is not lawful to consume. So you say Bismillah if you're a Muslim. If you're a Jew, you say some other prayer, but it means the same thing. You're mentioning God's name, you're making a prayer. And so that's what condition number 4, which is the mentioning of God's name. And number 5 is the swift cutting action. You do it with one blow. You don't decapitate the animal. You actually cut it in a way where you cut the jugular vein and you cut the jugular veins. That's the most important thing. And then you allow the animal to bleed out. Now, the animal at this time, again, I don't know how many of you have been in farms or have actually witnessed this, because human beings today, they have become urbanized. And what that means is that we are so far away from nature. Most of us have no clue that the food we get in a restaurant or in the store comes from a live source. Everything we got is prepackaged. Everything that we got is processed. But regular human beings all over the world, they actually see the animal and they know the animal before they kill it and then clean it and process it. So the animal is actually still moving at this time because the body is sending the blood all over up to the collarbone area, so the blood is coming out. And this way, the whole body basically empties out of the blood. And that's a very significant matter, because when the animal gets rid of all that blood, that's what makes the animal clean to consume. So some fast food restaurants, they offer halal options. In the stores, you have halal options when it comes to meat products. So those are the ones that we want to get as Muslims. If halal is not around, then you go to kosher. Kosher is the second best thing. Those are the two types of meat products that we are allowed to consume. Again, I'm going to repeat the conditions for you so you have them in your mind. And whoever would like a written document on that, I'm going to share with you some articles on that. But also you can shoot me an email or send an email to help desk, and then they'll forward it to me. And then I'll give you what I've written on this just to make it simple for you. We have published things on this topic in NMA. We have an ebook on this topic where we discussed it further. The conditions are, number one, the animal must be lawful to consume. Number two, the individual administering the slaughter must either be a Muslim or a Jew who practices the religion and practices the regulations of slaughter. Number three, the tool or the blade that is used is a sharp blade that's is not dull. It's not going to cause the animal to suffer. Number three, to mention God's name and to say the prayer before you take the life of the animal. That's what makes the animal lawful. Number five is to cut the animal in a swift blow, and not to decapitate it, but rather to make an opening in its neck where you cut the jugular vein and the esophagus and the throat, and then you allow it to bleed out completely. And after that, the animal is processed and you're able to consume it. So those are the 5 conditions. If you would like to read more on this, I will send you 2 articles here. Feel free to read them at your own pace. And then, if you have further questions, you can always get back to me and ask your questions. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. The first article is titled Introduction to Dietary Laws in Islam. So it's very important for us to have a foundation on this topic. Now, again, as new Muslims, many of us come from backgrounds where we didn't really care what we ate. Well, as Muslims, we have to care what we eat, because our body does not belong to us. It belongs to God, and God tells us how to maintain it. And we are only allowed to eat specific foods. Again, the lawful foods are so many. It's not like they're limited. There are so many varieties of lawful food, but we have to know what's lawful and what it's not. Also, some of us may have come from backgrounds. Again, if you were a Jew and you used to follow a strictly kosher diet, then you come to Islam. Well, some things in Islam are lawful that are not lawful for the kosher diet. As an example, camel meat, the animal, the camel, is not lawful to consume according to Judaism, but in Islam it is lawful to consume if it's slaughtered properly. So you're going to make adjustments even if you had specific dietary restrictions as a non-Muslim. Some non-Muslims who come to Islam, they come from a background where they were vegetarian or vegans. And the reason why they were vegans or vegetarians is because of the philosophy they believed in. You know, a lot of people who are counterculture, they follow counterculture movements like the hippies, and a lot of liberals, especially on the left, they tend to actually follow a vegetarian or a vegan diet. And the reason they do that is philosophically they believe killing animals is unethical, because they get to decide what's ethical and what's not. So the same people can kill their babies in the wombs, which is abortion, but they can't kill animals and eat them. They got things kind of twisted. So again, someone who comes from that background enters into Islam. Sometimes it could be a religious background. So if you're a Hindu and you became Muslim, so Hindus are supposed to be vegetarians. You come to Islam, well, now Islam says, oh, you can consume these things. Now, if you don't want to consume it, that's up to you. No one is going to force you to consume it. But you may not say that, oh, it's unethical. Because who are you to decide what's ethical and what's not? That's God's judgment. God is the one who decides what's ethical and what's moral. Also, it's part of our religion in Islam. Some acts of worship have to do with the animal sacrifice. In the pilgrimage, you offer an animal sacrifice if you're able to do so financially. Every single year, we have a celebration that's called the celebration of sacrifice. Now, you don't have to eat from the animal, but you must slaughter the animal in following the tradition of Abraham, the great messenger of God. And you do so as an act of worship and devotion. So you cannot leave that part of Islam. You got to enter into Islam wholeheartedly. And in fact, that's why we published a whole article called Enter into Islam Wholeheartedly, which I'm going to share with you right now. So let's start with this, which is the intro to dietary laws in Islam. Okay. And then that's going to be followed by eating the Islamic way, meat of the people of the book, health and fitness. So it's like a bunch of things. It's 7 lessons. I gave you the first one, and now I'm going to give you the link to the rest. Take your time in reading these, okay? So that's the first one. Now I'm going to share with you what we published. So we go to newmuslimacademy.org ebooks. It opens up ebooks for us, and let's see what we have here. Okay. Can a Muslim be a vegan? So that's one. Let's see that. That's for people who are vegans. Then we move on to enter into Islam wholeheartedly. Okay. Make sure you bookmark all of these, okay? And then we go to, I guess that's it. That's what we published from the ebooks. Yeah. All right. So that's that. And I hope that answers the question of our brother. Abdul Rashid, let me know if that answered your question. So again, halal food options, you got plenty of halal food options. And if you're in New York, you got plenty of kosher options. I know you may not feel comfortable going to, a kosher establishment, but they don't care. If you're a customer, you're buying money, you're buying from them. They don't care. But definitely support the Muslim establishments, the halal establishments. You're going to go do 2 good things. You're going to make sure that your food is clean. And that's the whole point. You want to make sure your food is clean, it's not contaminated. And number 2, you're going to make sure that you're supporting believers. You're not giving your money to corporations that don't care about humans. They don't care about health. They don't care about God. I don't know if you guys know, but a lot of these restaurants in the fast food industry, they have all types of creepy stuff that they put in their food. Like there was something called pink something. That's what they make nuggets out of. Some type of pink concoction, and it looks disgusting, but that's what they make a lot of chicken products from. Okay. So is it okay for Muslims to eat fast food? Well, fast food is not really the healthiest food, by the way. So if we're talking about taking care of our bodies, we got to eat clean food. But you can have things in fast food restaurants, like you can order a salad. And then for your protein, you can always order the fish options. So if you got, for example, fish sandwich, you can order that. That's in the mainstream fast food restaurants. But keep in mind, more and more fast food restaurants now are offering the halal option. So one of the most famous, I don't want to give a commercial here, but we have a fried chicken establishment in Los Angeles. It started in LA. I think now they spread all over the country. It's called Dave's Hot Chicken. So Dave's Hot Chicken was started by non-Muslims, But they thought that, or they saw in the market, the cleanest chicken that's around is halal chicken. So they offer halal certified chicken in their menu. That's all they offer. You can't have any other chicken in their restaurant. It's all halal. And that's a mainstream establishment. It's not even Muslims. Then in New York, you have something called the halal guys. They used to be like a, what is it called? A food truck originally, but now they've established franchises all over the country. So all their meat is halal, and that's a fast food restaurant. Fast food just means that you get your food very fast. You don't have to go in and dine in. What about food we get from the regular grocery store? Same thing. Food in the grocery store, you got to check if it has animal products. It's either got to be kosher or halal. So there's a trick. Kosher products will have a O, U, or K on top of, like, printed. So it tells you actually if it has animal products, it's kosher. You can always use the vegan and vegetarian products because that means it doesn't have animal stuff in it. Okay. Shiwala says, I want a record. I want a record. My question, please. I don't know what that means, but I think you want to like speak your question. So you want the mic on. Is that correct? So please clarify that for me. Amanda says, thank you for a wonderful class. I have to go back to work today and will have to listen to the recording on anime. Sorry, I can't stay for the Q&A. Thank you for your time, sharing your knowledge. I enjoy these webinars. You're very welcome. Thank you for being with us. Find myself talking to Allah and thanking Him in the morning while showering, getting ready for work. Is it haram to mention God's name in the bathroom or listen to Quran Islamic podcasts? Ooh. Okay. I find myself talking to Allah and thanking Him in the morning while showering, getting ready for work. Well, we shouldn't be mentioning God's name in the restroom. And again, what the restroom refers to is the place where we answer the call of nature, the place where we relieve ourselves. So the toilet. While on the toilet and relieving yourself, you must not engage in mentioning God. You stop at that time. In fact, we have a prayer that we say before we enter the toilet, which is, "Oh God, protect me from the devils and from all harmful things." And then we have a prayer that we say as we leave the toilet. We say, "Forgiveness from you, oh my Lord." And the reason we're seeking forgiveness is because that was a period of time when we did not talk to God and engage in worship. Okay? But now you're not talking about the toilet, you're talking about in the shower. So the shower typically is like a separate place. I know it's within the whole bathroom. So before we take a shower in Islam, we're supposed to say God's name. We say Bismillah. Before we make wudu, we say Bismillah. So we do make a short prayer, but we don't talk to God and engage in conversation at that time. We do our business, we take the shower, and we get out. So it's not a time of prayer and worship. The shower is supposed to be quick, and that's for multiple reasons. Number one, you don't want to waste water. It's not appropriate to waste water. Most people around the world struggle with water. I know that Western folks, we got plenty of water, so we don't even think about that. But as Muslims, we are told, don't be wasteful in water, even if you're taking a shower on a river. Like, even if you got all that access to water, don't be wasteful. Just use what you need and get it done with. So we're not supposed to actually talk to God at that time, other than this short prayer, Bismillah, with God's name, asking for His help, His blessings, and His protection. And then that's basically it. Is it haram? So you use the word haram. Haram is forbidden. Is it haram to mention God's name in the bathroom? Well, we said it's not appropriate. It's not respectful. That's not the place to mention God's name. It would not be appropriate. It would not be respectful. God's name is to be revered. It's to be honored and respected. Some of you may know the biblical command, don't take God's name in vain. So don't make God's name so cheap that you use it in places that are not appropriate. Is it not allowed to listen to the Quran and Islamic podcasts in the bathroom? Yeah, it's best not to. Now, if the Quran is playing, let's say outside in your bedroom, definitely don't have the Quran in the bathroom with you. That's not appropriate. But if it's playing in the bedroom and you can hear it in the bathroom, that's fine. That's fine. You should not recite the Quran in the bathroom. You should not be praying in the bathroom. But if you're hearing it from another place, that's fine. That's not actually you going out of your way to put it there in that inappropriate place. You're simply hearing it. Okay? But again, you want to make sure your time in the bathroom is limited. Don't be staying there for too long. Just get your business done and get out. Now, a lot of Western people, they have the habit of having like a whole library in their toilet because they sit on the toilet for so long. So they got newspapers and magazines. And then, of course, some people is so sick, but they have the Bible there in their toilet. They read the good book in the toilet. And for us as modern people with smart devices, people taking their phone there, they're chatting or they're texting or they're surfing the web or they're, doing all types of things. As Muslims, we're not supposed to engage in any of that behavior. You go to the bathroom intentionally, you're going to take care of your business in the bathroom. You shouldn't multitask in the toilet. You should not do that. It's not healthy for you. Like, make sure you do every task in life and give it your undivided attention. If you're spending a long time in the toilet, it's not very healthy, and it means you're either constipated or you got some other health problems. You should check in with a health professional. But that's not a healthy habit. You want to make sure that in the toilet, you're in and out. Shower, as we said, don't waste water. So then if that's the case, well, how much really can you listen to or engage in if you're in there? Okay? So make sure you respect God's name and you don't dishonor it by using it within the toilet, because the toilet is not a place of prayer. In fact, we are told the toilet is a place where the devils frequent. That's another reason why you don't want to spend too much time there, because that's what the devil's like. You don't want to be around devils for too long. Okay. Next question says, I'm the only Muslim in my office. We don't have a praying room, and most times I have to go pray on my sit at work. I don't know what that means. On my sit. What does that mean? On my sit. Does that mean on my chair or something? Or site? Site. Like in America, in corporate offices, you got cubicles, something called a cubicle. Is that what you're talking about? It says, is it okay to stop prayer while I have a customer to attend to at work or when called by a manager or colleague in the midst of prayer? I'm the only Black and Muslim in my department, so the whites don't understand and don't feel I have to pray while working. Bro, it doesn't matter what they understand or what they don't understand. You got to speak to your manager and tell them that I'm taking a break right now. It's a 5-minute break. I don't want to be interrupted. I don't want to be interrupted by a customer. I don't want to be interrupted by a colleague. If they can't respect that, that's very strange. So you have to speak, though. Like, you can't just take a break without letting people know, because you are responsible in that job. The other thing is to be very wise. When do you take the prayer break? So let's say you're working 9 to 5. That's your work schedule, 9 to 5. Well, you only have 2 salah in that whole time period, which is Dhuhr and Asr. Okay? The early afternoon prayer and the late afternoon prayer. Okay? So don't you have a lunch break? I think every job gives you a break for lunch, gives you a break for bathroom. Use that break for your salah. People don't bother you when you're on your break. No customer is going to come to you when you're on your lunch break and ask you for something. So you got to be wise in what time you take your break. But again, I don't know what your schedule is like. Maybe if you give me an idea, I can understand. I also don't know the type of work that you are in, so I don't want to be speaking out of line. But no, if you're praying, you must not stop prayer except if there is like an emergency. If someone is dying and you need to save their lives, but that's not what's happening in your work. Okay. Also, you should be in a place that's secluded. So you're saying there's no prayer room. Okay, well, you can, if it's an office building, you can go outside of the office and go maybe in the hallway, maybe go in the waiting area. There's different places. We got to think creatively. And maybe you can go to another floor within the same building and find some place. The staircase, there's usually some space in the staircase. You can stop there and do it. Go to the roof. So there are multiple places. Even if you're in the parking lot right next to your vehicle, you can do that. But the point is, if you are going to be in a place where people think you're at work, it's inevitable that they're going to stop you. So just communicate with them, let them know what you need, but also don't make prayer an excuse not to do your job. I mean, that's what ends up happening for some people. They take advantage of religious freedom in the workplace, and then they don't do their job, and they say, hey, I'm in prayer. No, you're only in prayer for 5 minutes. Prayer doesn't take more than that. So we got to be disciplined, we have to be intentional, and we have to make sure that we don't misrepresent our faith. But communicating with your seniors at work is very important. And they have no right to prevent you from prayer, by the way, because that would be considered discrimination. And you got two things. You said you're black and you're Muslim. Okay, well, those are two things that they should not discriminate against you on. They may not feel comfortable with that. Yes, they say you don't have to pray while working. Well, that's on them. They don't want to pray, that's on them. But if you have prayer, then you got to do prayer. But when do you do prayer? Again, take your personal time for prayer. Don't make prayer an obstruction to you doing your job. And if you do take time from your work to pray, then make up that time. Let's say you took 5 minutes from work time, then stay at work 5 minutes extra to make sure that you made up for that time. You don't want to get paid for prayer. You get paid for the work that you do. Is it mandatory to count the tasbih? I think that's what you're saying, after every salah. It's not mandatory. No, that's something recommended. And by the way, the word is tasbih with an H in the end, like this. Tasbih, not with an L. Okay? You said your office chair. No, you can't do prayer on the office chair. You got to move the chair and perform the prayer properly, standing up and bowing down. If you physically can stand up and bow down, then you must do it properly. It's not sitting down. Sitting down is for people who are crippled, people who are handicapped, people who cannot stand up and bow down. But if you can, then you move the chair away and you do it in your cubicle or your office space. Is it mandatory to count? No, it's not. It's highly recommended to do so. But again, if you're at work, you don't want to take extra time, just perform salah and that's it. And also only perform the obligation. You don't have to perform the sunnah while at work because your time is limited and your time is not fully yours. But as I said, please communicate with your superiors, and many times they will actually be very respectful. They will be very accommodating, and you may find out that, oh, there is a chapel in our workplace. There is a meditation room. There is some type of, room where people just go and storage. Like, ask for these options. Is there a storage room? Is there a meditation room? Is there a chapel? It's not going to necessarily be called a Muslim prayer space, because that would be discrimination. But usually only Muslims use these spaces, because Muslims are probably the only people who care about prayer. Other people, they pray in church, they pray in the temple, but they're not going to pray during work time for the most part. All right. Pink slime. Thank you, Professor. Yeah, pink slime, man. Okay, so alhamdulillah, we got someone else who's bearing testimony here to Dave's. And by the way, when you learn why are these non-Muslims offering halal on their menu, because they tell you it's the cleanest chicken, it doesn't have a foul smell, and the taste is better. So we're gonna have, our meal is not gonna be cheap, but you're gonna have a quality meal. So even non-Muslims recognize the benefit of the halal meat. Okay, you typed your question. Thank you. All right. I can stand and bow, but I cannot prostrate. And I believe what you mean is you can't go down on your face due to my leg injury. That's completely fine. That's completely fine. So you only do what you are physically able to do. So if you're not able to go, and So look, I'm typically someone who can go through all the motions. A couple of months ago, I injured my knee. I was playing basketball, I injured my knee. So I could no longer go down all the way on the ground with my face on the ground and to sit up on my, like to kneel down. So what I would do is just stand and bow down with my back. And then when it comes to going all the way down, I would sit. I would sit on the chair and just have the posture of bowing down, but not with my face on the ground because I couldn't get down. So that's fine. That's called a concession. That's called a dispensation for those who physically cannot offer the prayer in its full form. That's completely fine. You don't have to feel guilty about that. That's due to your condition, and God knows your condition. Again, you're not supposed to suffer while praying. Okay, the intention is not for you to suffer. Like some people, they're like in so much pain. It's like that's not intended. You're not supposed to cause yourself pain. And I mean, I did that to myself when I didn't even know I was injured, but when I prayed, the pain I was in was so severe. I'm like, this is not right. So then I figured I probably twisted it. But I would not put myself in that position again, because when you're in pain, your brain can't focus on what you're doing. Your brain and all your energy is looking at the place where you're feeling the pain. Okay. Okay, let's see what other questions we have. All right. Before you speak to your manager, Shaliwa, what I want you to do is pray to God and ask him for help. And that's actually why we have the lecture next week called Prayer for Help. Ask him to help you to be able to perform your religious obligations, regardless of where you are, whether you're at work, whether you're at home. Ask God for help. Also, before you speak to your manager, ask God to help you articulating your own cause and to present it in a way that would be accepted, and ask God to soften the heart of your manager and to make them understanding and to make them accommodate your need, your religious need. If also you need help, I can share a document with you regarding religious accommodations in the workplace. I don't know if that's something useful for you. I mean, they made this in America. Um, but I think you may be able to use it. Okay, so let me see if I can find it. Religious accommodation. Here we go. This says this is something you can actually share with your employer. It's called An Employer's Guide to Islamic Religious Practices. So this at least gives your employer an idea of what you may need. Okay. Now, this is based on the US. I'm sure you guys have something in the UK. So I would recommend you look up what you guys have in the UK. And then for all US people, you can also take a look at this and see if you need it or it could be beneficial for you. All right. So that's that. So that's an employer's guide. So you give that to your employer just so they know what you need. Now, right now you're talking about prayer, but you know, there's going to be the month of Ramadan. So you need to eat, but it's not going to be the lunch hour. Let's say you're working in the evening shift. Well, you are going to eat when the sun goes down. So that's not your typical lunch hour. So you're going to say, look, I'm not going to take my lunch hour, except maybe 5 minutes to pray in the daytime. But I need my lunch hour in the evening because I only got one meal, which is in the evening time. So these are things that they need to know. They don't know. You can't expect non-Muslims to know the Islamic regulations. That's why communication is so important. And that's why you should not be hiding your faith. If you're an adult and you live in your own your own home. I mean, a child or a minor is a different story, but if you're an adult and you're trying to practice your faith, it's good for you to share that. You don't have to tell the whole world, but share it with those people wherein it will make your life easier to share it with. So again, I'm telling you, share it with your employer or with your manager. You don't have to share it with the whole company. That's not of their business. But you share it with the people that are stakeholders. They need to know. They're the team lead, for example. They need to know. If you don't tell them, that means you're not being honest with them. Let's say you have food allergies. You have food allergies. You got to tell your employer, I have food allergies, so they don't bring the food that will cause you an allergic reaction that can actually mess you up. Especially like I know people have some severe allergies when it comes to peanuts, some people. So you got to tell your employer that. You would be doing yourself and your business an injustice if you don't disclose that. I understand some people are like, well, I'm insecure. I don't want people to look at me a certain way. That's you can't do that if you're going to be in public with other people. So you got to communicate. Don't get people into your business, but share with them at least what needs to be shared. Okay. I got a few other questions. Why do we salam the prophet, and do we do that for all the prophets? Okay, so all right, so this is actually a command of God. So the reason we do it is because God commanded it. The reference for that is chapter 33 of the Quran. I'm going to give it to you right now so you can read it for yourself. Okay. Someone recently asked me this, and I actually sent it to them. So I'm going to share with you what I shared with them, and hopefully that will answer the question. I mean, this could be long. Why do we do so? So number one, because God Almighty commanded it. Okay. So here's the actual reference. So put that reference. So this reference says, God Almighty blesses his messenger, and the angels pray for the messenger. O you who believe, also pray for the messenger and send him send the request to God to protect him. Okay. I gave a whole lecture on this, so I will share that with you so you can actually understand it further. Do we do that for all of the prophets? Yes, we do. So whenever we mention one of the messengers of God, their names, Islamic etiquette says for you to ask God to protect that messenger, to say alayhi salam or alayhi salatu wassalam. That's the Arabic way of saying it, but let's see here. 33. So chapter 33, passages 56. All right, it's not coming here, so okay. Let me send you the video. Another reason we do it, so number one, it's the command of God. The other reason we do it is that this is our way of showing appreciation for the messenger of God. Okay, so the messenger of God taught us and showed us the way to God. So as our way of showing appreciation, we make this prayer. We say, oh God, reward to this man. And that, okay. So this is a whole lecture. It's about a whole hour, so you can check it out, and hopefully this will help you understand this particular regulation further. It's our way of showing appreciation and asking God to reward him, basically to being grateful and thanking him. And we do so for all the messengers of God, because all the messengers of God played this role of teaching people who God is and teaching people the commands of God. But for us specifically, we are the followers of the final messenger of God. We appreciate all the previous ones, but he was the one that was sent to us. And he's the final messenger, and he's the universal messenger for all of humanity. So there are specific regulations related to him. And one of them is making this prayer. But whenever we mention any of the other messengers of God, we also ask God to bless them and reward them and shower them with protection. Okay. One more thing that I see here. I also struggle with wearing my hijab. Does it get easier? May Allah reward you for the difficulty that you are going through. Well, again, I would recommend that you ask God to help you. So the hijab for women is one of the regulations and the commands of God. And what I like to tell the sisters is you take gradual steps towards covering in a way that follows the dictates and the mandates of Islamic modesty. That's going to take time to adjust to. Non-Muslims, for the most part, especially contemporary people, they don't care about how they appear in public. So it's going to be very difficult to go from not dressing modestly to dressing super modestly, from being an average person to looking like a nun. That's not an easy thing. Of course, it's a struggle. But I would say make gradual changes into your wardrobe, dress more modestly, and be cautious of how you present yourself in public, and ask God for help in order for you to maintain the full garb of Islamic attire. But it does take time to adjust to. Does it get easier? Of course it does. Everything, when you first start it, it's a struggle. That's natural. Let's say, let's talk about working out in the gym. A lot of people say, man, it's so hard. I'm so sore after working out. Okay, but does it get easier? Of course it gets easier. With what? With time and with practice. You just got to be disciplined with it. You got to stay the course. You got to trust the process. What do they say? No pain, no gain. So now you're exercising. What are you exercising? You're exercising modesty. Is it difficult? Of course. We live, you said you're in LA. LA is like the place where you're encouraged to be naked, right? Billboards, everybody's naked. Hollywood, everybody's naked. Everything around you is naked and encouraging you to be naked, and you're trying to do the opposite. You're going against the current. Is that easy? No, it's not. Everybody's looking at you. Everybody's saying, what's wrong with you? You're in America. What? Your husband must have forced you to dress this way, or your father must have. And you're like, no, I'm a convert. I just became Muslim on my own. And try to explain that to them. They tell you, go back where you came from. You're like, I'm from here. I was born here. My ancestors were here. So they start treating you like you're a foreigner. Why? Just because you have the Islamic attire. But is it worth it? It is worth it, because you're following in the footsteps of Mary, the Virgin Mary, the mother of Jesus, and all the righteous women throughout history. They all dress modestly. That's our role models. Is it easy to follow that role model? No, it's not. The people at the time of Mary, they did not have very fond things to say about her, although she was the best and most pure of women. And that's what happens when people have insecurities. They project their insecurities onto you. So they tell you, oh, but you look so pretty. Why are you covering your hair? It's like, don't worry about it. It's my business. Right? And also what I would say is learn about the benefits of dressing this way. Learn about the stories of resilience of women who dress this way. People who want to please God and say, this body belongs to God. It ain't my body, my choice. It's God's property and my responsibility. So I'm going to please God regardless of the difficulties that I am facing. So is it a challenge? Of course it is. Is it a struggle? Of course it is. Does it get easier? Yes, but it starts in your mind. It starts with the environment that you surround yourself by. It starts with you asking God for help and assistance, because we can't do anything on our own. And it starts with being selective who we spend time with, because if people are always going to be negative and toxic about your religious practice, you'll start leaving the religious practices one by one. I mean, we spoke about food today. Well, if you're around people who eat all types of food and you're like, oh, I have restrictions, they're going to start mocking you. So you got to be around people who eat what you eat. This way it becomes very easy. So like when I go out with my Muslim people, we don't have a problem because we're going to go to a halal restaurant. We're going to eat halal food. Ain't nobody ordering alcohol. I don't have to worry about that. But if I went out with a non-Muslim, you guys all know non-Muslims drink, right? So I'm going to be putting myself in an awkward position. Why do I do that to myself? I should just excuse myself and say, you know what? See you later after you're drunk, after you recuperate from your drunkenness, after you regain your sanity. I'm not going to engage in that foolishness. So the same thing. If people want to go clubbing, you're definitely not going to go clubbing dressed like a nun, right? So don't go with the people who are clubbing. Go with the people who want to be modest and who want to protect their bodies and protect their modesty and please God. But is it a struggle? Definitely is. May God help all of us who are struggling to please him. Okay? Yeah, the struggle definitely is real. All the questions are covered. Our time is up. Thank you all for being with us. Allah bless you and reward you and accept from you. We ask God Almighty to help us to worship him in the best of ways and to forgive us for our shortcomings and to guide us and to keep us steadfast on his faith. With that, we'll conclude today's session. We ask God Almighty to protect you all. Assalamu alaikum. Until next week. See you then. You're all very welcome. Wa alaikum assalam. And our brother Everett says, have a good holiday if you're celebrating. I like that if, brother. Yeah. All right. Enjoy yourselves and celebrate responsibly according to the regulations of Islam. All right. Take care, everyone.